Welcome to part 2 of the Shadow of the Colossus Iceberg. Today we'll be finishing up levels 5 through 8. As always, this iceberg is brought to you by Clean Casual. Level 5, Lower Half. 43. Phaedra uses Devil's Battle Strategy. As previously mentioned, the Devil was supposed to look for Wander in the tall grass throughout his arena, giving Wander the opportunity to leap upon him. This has clear parallels to Wander's fight with Phaedra. Instead of grass, Wander must now conceal himself within an interconnected underground maze-like tunnel as Phaedra peeks in the doorway that Wander recently escaped through. Again, Wander must now go around, flanking the Colossus and jumping onto it from its blind spot while it is distracted in its search. 44. Giant Tree Alive. The giant or colossal tree that is found at the southern entrance to Dirge's cave is actually alive, according to some theories. As it stands in the final game, it is stripped bare, a wooden skeleton whose branches stab toward the sky. However, in the OPM demo, the tree contains leaves and is full and lush from a distance. However, as Wander gets closer, the leaves disappear, revealing the dead husk of this once great tree. Were there meant to be illusions in the game, slowly demonstrating Wander's increasingly distorted view of the world as more of Dorman's essences entered his body? Or perhaps it was to create a sense of foreboding, of powerlessness as Wander struggles to tell reality from illusion. Just how far would they go? Is this entire land far less dead than what can already be seen? Is the lifeless landscape but an illusion, perhaps, created by Lord Iman's ancestors to show what a desolate place these lands are, further projecting the evil from which no life can grow under Dorman, to keep people away? Or is the opposite true? Is the world truly dead and lifeless, but the animals, the waterfalls, trees, and foliage but a projection of Dorman's, intended to be inviting or to otherwise lure people in? Could the trees and fruits being eaten from be an illusion themselves, a transmodification of something else that Wander is incapable of dispelling as he sees, touches, and eats from them? 45. Blue Vest Beta. Dubbed the Blue Vest Beta due to the blue vest-like tunic Wander dons underneath, in this version, the Colossus health meter not only shows a miniature version of said Colossus, but it also seems that the image lit up around where the Colossus weak points were located. Whether this was later removed for making the fights too easy, taking away the element of discovery, remains unknown. Could this be a credit to the capricious nature of Dorman, not divulging all of the known information about the Colossi? Or was he bound from what he could or could not say, perhaps by the ritual that imprisoned him, so that he could not fully direct a champion to dispatch the Colossi? The stone formations in the ground that are used to break open Gaius's armor appear in 4 simple patterned squares. Additionally, Phalanx had blue fur and red symbols on its wings. From Gaius's squares and Phalanx's markings, could more runes and etchings have been intended as an additional clue and piece of world building in the game? Could each pattern be indicative of the sealing ritual or incantations used in order to seal Dorman's essences into the Colossi? 46. Unseen Wind. For the players that managed to climb to reach the secret garden, they were also able to traverse back across the great bridge that brought them to the Forbidden Lands. At the end, you could barely make out the barest visuals of what lay beyond. However, the player is kept back by a power and seemingly unrelenting wind, an interesting visual and effect purposefully coded into the game, suggesting this was wholly intended. Now imbued with the essences of Dorman, or simply bound by his word to free him and save Mono, the ritual that cast him here now binds Wander to the Forbidden Lands. Are the Colossi similarly bound? This would also explain how Lord Iman and his men are able to leave the lands, as they do not contain the essence of Dorman, nor have they entered a pact with him. Thus, they are able to move freely in and out of these lands. are Mono and the baby similarly bound to remain in the Forbidden Lands forever? Mono, for being sacrificed for and yet still brought back through Dorman's power, and the baby, now sporting the horns after having been the physical vessel to Dorman himself. 47. B5 Towers. From its glimpse in the Nico DVD to the OPM demo, the B5 Towers have been curious structures that were removed later in development. They were relatively well structured, even featuring the etchings and intricate symbolic carvings associated with various colossi and arenas. Why were they removed? Could they have been a location for a new colossi, a place in which Dorman or a colossi needed to be lured, etc.? Do these etchings serve a purpose now abandoned, similar to how players were able to triangulate the location of the hidden door in Seleucia's cave from the 4 colossi carvings found? As the colossi seem to be made up of abandoned architecture, could these pillars have additionally served as parts for the colossi? 48. Giantology was not related to Shadow of the Colossus. One theory states that Giantology was not related to Shadow of the Colossus in the slightest, but merely a wholly separate entity that curiously occurred within the same time frame leading up to the game. Were these snapshots and video clips taken and summarily hidden or otherwise espoused as being fake and lumped onto the Shadow of the Colossus as a cover-up? This Eric Belson that created the blog supposedly lived in Illinois with his girlfriend Lauren and went on an expedition to prove that giants really exist, or at least existed. After promising in a postcard to send his girlfriend photo proof of his discovery, he was never seen or heard from again. And so Belson and Giantology ceased to put out information, again coinciding around the game. Glenn Sanders was hired by Sony for its marketing campaign, and it was she that came up with this Eric Belson and the other figures throughout. Some have theorized that Shadow of the Colossus was a game created to mask or otherwise explain found giants or similar structures as seen in the Giantology campaign, even creating its own to add to its believability, or in this case, unbelievability. According to this theory, the true reason that only 16 colossi with a planned 24 existed was a means to cover up or otherwise have people correlate any images that had already been taken of these select remains to not be taken seriously. In the meantime, the proper agencies would remove the remains to another location to keep them out of the public eye. Perhaps there really were 48 colossi. The 24 that we know of are the ones that the common man was able to discover. 49. Valis returns. One theory postulates that Valis returns, but then again, all the colossi can be refought in the time attack or hard mode. Valis in particular can be an added challenge in hard mode due to his various attack points in the head, leg, and now the arm. How and why would additional piercing points of the magical inlay be possible? 50. Aggro is a colossus. Aggro has been shown to survive incredible events and falls, such as falling down a cliff when called, or into the watery chasm prior to the Malice fight. How is she able to survive? Perhaps upon entering the Forbidden Lands, she, like the other wildlife and environment, is timeless or somehow immortal, never aging or dying, and contains certain regenerative properties or strength. Remember, Loki the Hawk and others are able to carry Wander. By the end of the game, however, the notion of Aggro being a colossus becomes more apparent. As each colossi is killed, Dorman's essence seems to latch on to the nearest living entity, or at least its killer, Wander. Save for the Hawks and Valis' area in Aggro, animals aren't normally found in the colossi arenas proper. At the end of Shadow of the Colossus, Wander is possessed by Dorman after killing all 16 colossi. While possessed, he grows horns and sports glowing eyes. When he is killed or sealed by Iman, this either destroys Dorman's essence or, more likely, scatters it once more. After all, the baby, Eco, the Shadowlings, Trico, and the guards all have horns. Could that be from the scattering of his essence? Trico, for example, is more notable for, perhaps, being a fraction of Dorman's essence because of her glowing eyes, horns, large body, and lightning coming out of her tail. She also wore the armor of the other Trico, which somewhat resembles the colossi. That fall nearing Malice was intended by the game and should have killed her. Perhaps she actually did die or was otherwise severely injured and awaiting death. Once Dorman's essence was dispelled, it scattered, latching on to Agro's organic form and, perhaps, Mono's, making them the next generation of Colossi. 51. Nomad Colossus intentionally gives wrong info. A bit of a fun theory for some, this suggests that Nomad intentionally misleads his followers or otherwise gives misleading or incorrect information about the game. Supposedly, this may be done in an effort to keep certain aspects or purposes of the game hidden or otherwise detracting from things that are to stay hidden, instead focusing on other elements found within the game for speculation. 52. The tree must be ignored. Going back to the tree above Dirge's cave, one theory suggested that it was somehow integral to finding the 17th Colossus. One stated that the player must complete a playthrough without looking at the tree to get the 17th Colossus. In development, its disappearing leaves seem to demonstrate its illusion-like capabilities. So would this have also revealed a similar illusion or hidden pathway? 53. Devil's Plain. Devil's Plain is the name given to the area in D2 that was thought to be the location for Devil's seemingly unfinished area. In the final game, the area seems to serve no purpose other than connecting the surrounding plains. Level 6. Bottom of the Iceberg. 54. Mono is Eco's queen. Mono becomes the ethereal dark queen of Eco. Simply put, the 17th Colossus, assuming it to be the Sword of Dorman, was never taken or destroyed in this timeline. At the end of Shadow of the Colossus, Mono and the baby are seen entering the secret garden. The fruit therein already drain or weaken one's life force, and, as I posited earlier, it is because the sword below them is corrupting them. Perhaps after eating this fruit, the only food readily available to them, as they are now isolated in this forbidden land, it slowly began to corrupt her. Additionally, she could have simply been a life force that Dorman's essence latched onto when he was destroyed. Like the essence of Dorman, the Queen too sports the black tendril so reminiscent of Dorman's own essence. As we learn from the Queen, she wants Yorda in order to take over her body, a new vessel, thus prolonging her life. This is why her visage has changed. She has done this countless times before. As the fruit seems to corrupt one's body, and the colossi were made out of stone, perhaps being host to Dorman's essence truly weakens and causes one's mortal body to deteriorate at a far more rapid pace. Yorda, being her daughter according to her, could be more beneficial as it means her new vessel will be less likely to reject her spirit, perhaps being more compatible due to genetics. Again, she has no doubt done this before, most likely with multiple daughters. This is why the horned boys are sent here. Dorman or the Queen wishes to reclaim the essence and become more powerful. 55. Badlands and Sluis, Barba replaced Rock. The Badlands and Sluis are the unused areas for Rock and Yamori A respectively. After Rock and the Badlands were discarded, Barba and the Canossa took their place on the map. It was host to a desert-like landscape with a huge impact crater on its center. It is filled with various types of ruins, including a massive pillar which the Colossus rested on and was located in D6. Sluis was supposed to be at B3, but the pillars leading to the Pathway Cave entrance from this area do not exist anymore in the final game. Due to some light effects, it was believed to be similarly underground in a now unreachable cave somewhat akin to Dirge's. The areas in their colossi were repurposed for others, or left and closed off to time. 56. Sirius walking backwards. Several animations of Sirius were found in the E3 demo build. They are loaded in Cenobia's body, one of them is loaded in Celosia, but aren't all performed by them in gameplay, and walks backwards. This is used by Celosia in order to prepare to ram the altar. Cenobia has a faster version of the same animation named Cerberus A Back. 57. Emon throws a horn. In the PSU preview demo, Lord Emon throws a horn instead of a sword into the pool to banish Dorman. Was the horn merely a placeholder for the sword? If not, where did he get a full horn from? If this takes place during or after Eco, Could it be from the Horned Boys? Or could it be from Emon himself? Emon has bandages wrapped about his head, approximately where his horns could have been. Perhaps in order to seal Dorman, one must have part of his essence or must have turned away from his power. Could Emon's ancestor be the first horned boy that broke from Dorman to seal him? 58. Buddha. Expanded on in the art book, Buddha was the previous final boss, instead located at I-7. That would be replaced later by Evis or Malice. Buddha was to be placed in the middle of its arena, and to progress, Wander needed to navigate around a maze of tunnels, going inside one and out the other in a similar way to its final version, avoiding its beam attacks until finally reaching its back and feet. It is likely that the Colossus turned around in order to shoot Wander, as there are tunnels even behind it. Again, it is noted for being at I-7, which is in the middle of the water on the southeastern corner of the map. The invisible lands, the invisible pathway above the water being located at H8 and D8, the former but a short ways away. Could the invisible path have been the rudimentary coding for the land extending to Buddha's arena? Or was something more clandestine and spiritual intended, as the title Buddha would imply? Could this be the formless realm mentioned in Buddhism? And I am going to apologize so heavily for all of the mispronunciations coming up. The Arapukola, or formless realm, consists of none of the beings inhabiting it as either shape or location, and correspondingly the realm has no location either. This realm belongs to those devas who attained and remained in the four formless absorptions of the Upadhyanas in a previous life, and now enjoys the fruits, or vipaka, of the karma of that accomplishment. Could Wander's accomplishments with the previous 15 colossi be this similar link? Interesting, the Samyutta Nikaya states, quote, "According to the seed that's sown, so is the fruit you reap therefrom. Doer of good will gather good, doer of evil, evil reaps. Down is the seed, and thou shalt taste the fruit thereof." Could the deeds Wander has done, killing the Colossi to free Mono, be considered as him being a doer of good or evil? He is trying to save someone, albeit through unnatural means and means that release an evil Dorman. Has the pathway of good or evil been opened upon a formless plane, leading to judgment in the realm of Buddha? On a more literal note, Wander eats from the powerful forbidden fruit that empowers him or weakens him in the case of the shrine's fruit. Was this meant to be a more ethereal arena, as Wander's visage and essences of Dorman grow within him, making him more celestial, or hellish, as he goes? 59. Worm's Idol. A texture of Worm's statue was found among the game's files, and it shares the same texture as Phalanx's statue. In universe, perhaps the statue's creation and its corresponding Colossus, or Worm, was destroyed. Perhaps by a past champion, its statue erased along with it, the shrine rearranging to make up for its lack. Level 7, Under the Iceberg. 60. 2004 Demo. Shown for the first time during 2004's Tokyo Game Show, it was headlined under Sony Computer Entertainment, which was later renamed to the Sony Interactive Entertainment that we know. As noted in the Iceberg, this demo has not been found or otherwise made available to fans, and there has been various speculations about its performance between its 2004 appearance here and the next demo available in 2005. Could it have been more reminiscent to the alpha build, or perhaps it was similar to the original vision shown under its title of Nico? Regardless, the 2004 demo may be one of the many mysteries of Shadow of the Colossus that is never answered. 61. Wander is an angel. One theory suggests that Wander is an angel. Could a human's body truly be host to or contain so many essences of Dorman? Assuming Wander is a celestial being, a guardian angel perhaps, this would explain his stronger constitution and his ability to move and function after absorbing each essence and becoming progressively transformed. Additionally, this could be a loose link to his ability to hear and communicate to Dorman through the light in heavens, as he has an innate link to them. This could also mean that Agro is similarly celestial, helping to explain her giant size and similar rugged constitution and how she is able to survive so many events that would kill or frighten other horses. If he really is an angel, what would have possessed him to come to the world of man and save Mono? Is Mono an angel as well, a celestial being whose powerful life was sacrificed in order to keep Dorman contained? 62. The Colossi created Dorman to be sealed within themselves. The Colossi are actually, or at least were, sentient and fully functioning, intelligent beings that sealed Dorman inside themselves in order to attain more power. To achieve this, they set about having Lord Iman's ancestor perform the ritual. Perhaps the humans were enslaved or otherwise fearful of the Colossi. However, upon Dorman's essence being fused inside of them, they lost control and, for many, their minds. Worm, Griffin, and many of the other unnamed Colossi went mad, destroying themselves, or perhaps they destroyed each other in a vicious battle to mindlessly attain more essence for themselves. And, as the theory suggests, did the Colossi actually create Dorman themselves? How and what was he made from? Was he the sacrificed spirits of humans, suggesting why Dorman's voice is both male and female, and the human-shaped shadow creatures appear about Wander as their Colossus is destroyed? The Colossi did not have the means to create life, merely change its form. The power of a soul, sacrificed and corrupted, seeking vengeance against those responsible. 63. The language is real, but dead. Both Shadow of the Colossus and Eco use a fictional language, with Yorda from Eco using a runic language, and the Horned Boy and Dorman from Shadow of the Colossus using another. The spoken language of Shadow of the Colossus seems to be a mixture of backwards or otherwise deformed Japanese and added Romanization Latin dialect. Yorda's runic language is written by substituting backwards Japanese Romaji and spoken backwards Japanese. With ties to modern Japanese and Latin, albeit deformed, it could be that these languages are dead chimeras of ancient languages, brought together by communities of both spoken words, slowly morphing into this ancient culture. Think the Silk Road, if you will. Over time, the language changed, as the deviations in language show across many traceable and long-lived dialects. For my native English speakers, go read Canterbury Tales and tell me how that goes. 64. Beyond the Forbidden Lands. According to the Team Eco Wiki, Beyond the Forbidden Lands is a non-profit, fan-made PC remake of Shadow of the Colossus, with the restoration of cut content as a major focus, including the unused Colossi and removed areas from the game. The game provides the option of playing as close to the original Shadow of the Colossus as possible, along with the inclusion of a story mode which is set before Shadow of the Colossus. The development for this project began in 2018. For reference, a public release of the demo was available starting on the 21st of December 2019 to over 2 years, but was made unavailable as it no longer represented how the game was going to look. A new demo is planned for future release. 65. Goat Murals. A series of 4 goat murals have been found in the PS4 remake of Shadow of the Colossus. What is the significance of a goat compared to any other creature they could have chosen? For one, goats have horns, just like Dorman and Wander when he becomes possessed, and also when he is reborn as a baby, among many others. In ancient cultures, goats were commonly used as sacrifices to the gods. In Eco, all of the horned children were used as sacrifices as well. In the culture that Wander, Mono, and the shaman, Iman, come from, they're clearly utilizing human sacrifices, hence Mono's death. It would be plausible to assume that animal sacrifices were also a common occurrence in their culture. What if you need to shine your sword's light directly on the goat murals to activate an effect, not just near them? The beam does seem to perfectly focus when aimed at the goat. What if aligning it to the correct Colossus you fight next, i.e. the next sacrifice, or otherwise revealing the next being that was sacrificed a certain way, perhaps, such as being a horned boy at one time, activates these goats at specific points in your playthrough to activate their effects? Taking a different approach, the goat could also be a reference to the occult deity known as Baphomet. who has the head of a goat, and it is said to have both male and female features, akin to Dorman's voice being two voices, one male and one female. On Baphomet's arms are two Latin phrases, the first, solve, which means separate, and coagula, which means joined together. When Aemon banished Dorman the first time, again before the events of the Shadow of the Colossus, he was separated into 16 pieces, each piece being joined together with the Colossus. When Wander fights the Colossus, he again similarly separates the evil energy from the beast, and in the end they all join together using his body as a host, to emerge as the evil horned deity, Dorman. 66. There is no symbolism. Put down your pitchforks. One theory suggests that there is absolutely no symbolism in the game. Every clue and decision were purely aesthetic in purpose, as one might choose a certain furniture for no other reason than it would look good in a certain spot in their house. No thought to its material or composition or anything other than surface level considerations. The symbols that triangulated over Seleucia's lair were just reused textures to make the area they're found in look similarly pleasing or deep. The enlightenments, the goats, and everything else are all a fun distraction meant to be purely entertaining. 67. The Colossi were entertainment, or enslaved to humans. There are quite a few theories that suggest that the Forbidden Lands used to be the home of powerful shamans, like Lord Aemon's ancestors, who, like the Quarian and Geth of Mass Effect, are ejected from their home by their very creation and decisions. As extrapolated upon by Redditor Riven Knight, there are two important things we can infer from the Shrine of Worship. Firstly, that there was a massive and flourishing human civilization here that created all of these structures. Secondly, that Dorman was worshipped. And of course Dorman was worshipped. Whatever they are, Dorman very specifically uses plural pronouns, they have power over light and life, and it makes sense that humans would worship such a being. What we know is that, at one point, the population turned against Dorman, as evidenced by their state when Wander finds them. However, one of the key points is that, after sealing Dorman, the humans who turned against them didn't leave. Why? Looking at Phaedra's boss arena, it is specifically referred to by Dorman as rows of guiding graves, even though what you see in-game is clearly a burial mound. If the humans who betrayed Dorman had left immediately after sealing them up, there would have been no reason for this structure to exist, because death wasn't an issue under Dorman's reign. Ergo, they must have stayed in the Forbidden Lands for a time afterwards. A long-debated topic is whether or not the creation of the Colossi was intentional. Otherwise, why design the statues so specifically? Whoever cast the spells that trapped Dorman's essence inside the statues built them with extremely unique designs. The argument could be made that they just sealed them in stone, and then Dorman's power transformed the stones into the statues and made the Colossi. Perhaps at first, the civilization tried to use the Colossi as beasts of burden or entertainment. Look at the platforms on Valus's back. Those only exist for one purpose: carrying humans. The fact that he has a club as well implies that he was used to attack things. The Colossi, from what we see in-game, are clearly sentient, but most of them don't seem particularly intelligent, so they would have been easy to use. Barba and Kuramori in particular seem as if they were used as entertainment, judging by the fact that their arenas resemble gladiator coliseums. Dirge was used for tunneling and excavating rock. Further evidence for this is Seleucia, and the reaction to fire. It's angry and aggressive right up until you wield the flaming stick. Then it is terrified of you. That kind of reaction is not natural. That is trained. It was trained to be afraid of fire as a method of controlling it. The rings in the desert were built to prevent Phalanx from leaving with a similarly trained pattern. So this ancient civilization attempted to harness the Colossi for their own game. Perhaps some, again perhaps Dirge, had to be left alone and others contained, but for the most part they were somewhat coexisting with these creatures. Now of course that raises the question, if they were able to contain or control the Colossi, why did they leave? Simply put, Malice. Malice is the only Colossi whose boss arena is specifically built to approach him safely. He's the only one who's locked behind a gate which requires all the other Colossi to be dead to open, which requires a sword that was heavily guarded to even access. Why is Malice so special? Malice is the reason why the human civilization abandoned the Forbidden Lands. There were possibly a few fatalities in securing the other Colossi, but Malice was locked up so thoroughly that it seems as if the humans who attempted to reach him were slaughtered by his bolts of power. They finally locate the last Colossi, the one designed like a walking tower, the one that could ensure the safety of their people. They approach him, and Malice rains down thunder from the heavens. The humans, little by little, carve a haphazard path to try and reach and appease him, but they can't actually hurt him without the sword, and killing him risks freeing Dorman. At this point, they simply lost too many people to Malice, and potentially to the other Colossi, and they couldn't get rid of them without freeing Dorman. So the ones who remained sealed up the other Colossi as best they could, gathered up their people, and left the accursed place, which explains some of the demo aspects of the game with missing bridges, landmarks, and some of the sealed canyons. And time eradicated the structures until time itself crawled to a standstill. And then Dorman laid in wait for someone to return with a sword that could break the seals. To sum this theory up, there used to be a booming human civilization in the Forbidden Lands that created the architecture and worshipped Dorman. For some reason they turned against him and sealed up this being, thus creating the Colossi. The Colossi were originally used as beasts of burden, but Malice and others killed too many people for things to be sustainable, so the rest of the humans fled, and then time was frozen until Wander arrives. Riffing off of this, we see a little bit of the Redditor See You in Valhalla's postulations. People never lived side by side with the Colossi. They worshiped the idols that we see in the big shrine, not Dorman. Maybe when Dorman came, they imposed their power over the idols, and that's why they destroyed the civilization. Every idol could represent several things, like the Nordic gods. Thor, thunder and farming. Phaedra, death and sacrifice. Again, Phaedra's arena seemed to be built upon gravestones or a gravesite. The people in the Forbidden Lands lived in peace and harmony. They were an advanced civilization because they could use magic, specifically the shamans. That's why they could build those massive structures and imbue their golems or colossi with the abilities that they have. Then, Dorman came and destroyed the lands. People fled away and the shamans stayed in order to build the colossi with magic. They gave the idols life, because a god, Dorman, can only be stopped by other gods, idols, colossi. The ancient sword was made in order to defeat Dorman and pull apart their soul. 16 parts, one in each colossus, cutting off their intelligence and usefulness, but also trapping Dorman. The shamans sealed the lands and started a new life for the people that survived the rage of Dorman. And the reason that Malice looks at you curiously is that, does it see its masters, Dorman's essence? Does it see the human masters it once had that abandoned them? Or does it become confused by the combination of both human and Dorman? 68. The Colossi can be controlled. Through the use of legitimate hacks, controls for the Colossi have been found. According to Nomad Colossus, quote, the developers left controls for the Colossi as they had planned to have a 2-player game with player 1 as Wander and player 2 as a Colossus, but they didn't do it in the end. But the controls are still there, end quote. Could this be a nod to, assuming the Colossi were a part of the ancient civilization, or were once controllable by Dorman, that they still retained these links to their creator or creators? 69. The Colossi are the spirits of the Horned Boys, human sacrifice. In Eco, shadow creatures routinely attack Eco, attempting to take Yorda back to the Queen. At the end of the game, the creatures seem to be of a form more akin to Eco's own, a small boyhood form with their own horns. In Shadow of the Colossus, the shadow creatures appear more docile, creepily standing over Wander. As we see with Wander's final form, after absorbing more and more of Dorman's essence, his skin pales and he too sports horns. Additionally, after Dorman is sealed away, the human baby, presumably Wander, has horns and he remains. Perhaps the reason that horned boys and children are so reviled is that they all contain, to some capacity, some of Dorman's essence. The reason that they are sacrificed to the queen, aka the host to Dorman, is so that his essence can continue to gather in one form, collecting more power. With each Colossi killed, one more shadow creature stands over Wander, having separated Dorman's essence from their own body, but no less trapped and confined to this plane of existence. Some of the forms from the shadow creatures, though, seem more grown. Could they have been a product from the sealing ritual? 16 acolytes, grown horned men to teens to children, gave their lives in order to bind Dorman's essence to their own souls, then imprisoning these souls into the bodies of the carved colossi. This is why the colossi attack you to varying degrees. Some are outright aggressive on sight. They know no one with good intentions should be found in the Forbidden Lands, and perhaps can sense the evil force of the essences that you have already collected. They must continue to fulfill their duty, kill you and keep Dorman's essences separate. Or perhaps they have deteriorated or broken down more over time, losing control and giving in to some of Dorman's more violent tendencies. For the ones that are only hostile when attacked, you pose no threat to them or their mission, and thus, until you do, you are to be ignored. They don't wish to harm a human. In fact, that may be why they volunteered, assuming they were given a choice. For Phalanx, the only true pacifist Colossus, perhaps the acolyte or horned child that gave up its life or was forced to, was truly a kind soul, still able to keep all of its humanity and gentility. Perhaps now resigned to death as a means of ending one's own suffering, although resisting the sting of a blade can still prove difficult, which is why Phalanx dives and tries to escape. 70. The Order of Defeating Colossi. The order in which you kill the Colossi speaks to slowly overcoming the human condition or psyche and losing yourself. From the animal Colossi, such as the horse-like Phaedra, until you reach the final Colossus, Malice, who is the most human in appearance of all the Colossi. This is probably for irony's sake. Wander has previously killed 15 monsters, deteriorating his appearance with each kill, and, by dispatching Malice, the most human-looking, loses the last of his aesthetic humanity. As well as being the most human in appearance of all the Colossi, Malice sounds the most human in its roars and bellows as well. The act of murder of both animal and man is what truly separates the man from the monster. 71. Dirge's Friend. In the preview version of the game, the line spoken from Dorman concerning Dirge was mistranslated to read, "Along with its friend, it shakes the earth," which spawned numerous rumors about Dirge being originally meant to be fought alongside other Colossus, whom was often said to be either Saru or Worm. Supposedly, the line was intended to be a hint that the player would need the help of Agro, their friend, to win this battle. Level 8. The Abyss. 72. Headless Mono. In the OPM demo, Mono's headless form can be found T-posing at the entrance to the secret garden. This is of course the default model pose at the time, but why doesn't she have a head? Perhaps the initial ritual sacrifice that killed Mono required her to be beheaded, and her body was the only thing that Wander could rescue to bring to the Forbidden Lands. Perhaps this is symbolic of her eventually losing her mind upon resurrection, or that her body, which has no collision detection, thus being incorporeal, is interred already at the shrine following her sacrifice. Her spirit is already a part of the shrine of worship, so this is why Wander brings her physical body here. Perhaps, assuming Buddha was the final boss, Mono's form would be found in the formless realm, as she, too, is without a physical form or place, and this would be the final battle to save her. 73. Robert Flood. In the PSU preview cutscene, images of Robert Flood's creation and worldview are shown throughout. Robert Flood is, perhaps, best known for his compilations in occult philosophy, his conception of the macrocosm and microcosm relationship. The divine light was the active agent responsible for creation. This informed the development of the world and the sun respectively. Flood concluded from reading of Psalm 19:4, quote, "In them hath he sent a tabernacle for the sun," end quote, that the Spirit of the Lord was contained literally within the sun, placing it central to Flood's model of the macrocosm. As the sun was to the earth, so was the heart to mankind. The sun conveyed the spirit to the earth through its rays, which circulated in and about the earth, giving it life. Likewise, the blood of man carried the spirit of the Lord, the same spirit provided by the sun, and circulated through the body of man. Thus, it is through this same circular visage of Flood's work, seen in the preview, and realized in the game as the whole from which Dorman's godlike light, or sun, shines through to communicate. It is through sacrifice that Dorman was potentially sealed, and through which Mono died. The human blood contains, and is the vessel for his spirit. Thus, it is only through the human blood that Dorman's essences can latch onto after being defeated, a reason Dorman was incapable of doing so himself. 74. 1998 drawings. More obscure are Fumito Ueda's 1998 drawings. Many depict beasts, particularly ones that seem to be hunted, caged, or otherwise contained by human beings. Interestingly, the humans, to a degree, seem to show varying levels of technology and equipment. Some, as in image number 12, wear special suits and seem to be using some form of technology on a grimacing beast. And number 13, more tribal-looking humans appear to be corralling another. Could this demonstrate a difference of social classes? In particular, in number 13, look at the creature's eyes. Add a blue or orange glow, and they are quite similar to the Colossi. Were these the giant beasts that Dorman's essence were infused with, or were otherwise imbued with properties by the shamans of old, transforming great and powerful beasts of legend into beings and beasts of labor? 75. Swapped bodies. One theory suggests that Aggro is actually Wander, trapped in a horse body, Wander is Mono, trapped in Wander body, and Aggro is trapped in Mono's body, and that's why she can't wake up. Simply put, a horse doesn't know how to use a human body, and beating the Colossi cycles the spirits back to the right place. This is why Wander and Aggro care for each other so much, and, besides losing a dear animal companion as Argo or Wander throws Wander or Mono off to save her, hopefully still in the hopes of returning her to her own body. The act of Aggro launching Wander away from falling to his death seems quite intelligent for a horse, and why Aggro's apparent loss seems so devastating. Perhaps this is also why some have complained about the controls of the game. After all, each is learning the bounds of their own bodies, akin to when someone goes through a growth spurt and can be uncoordinated for a time of adjustment. The Colossi, mostly seeming animals, could have been similarly swapped souls to prevent Dorman from using his essences to exert true control over these forms. 76. The pool is a portal to the Last Guardian. The pool is where Dorman is sucked into. This is the cool pool seen toward the beginning of the game, or its opposite end, and the Last Guardian, where the shield or disc is found. This is why Trico has multicolored eyes. The armored knights and Tricos, in addition to horned children, are the result of Dorman's spirit teleporting through and inhabiting these creatures. He is, generally, seeking to imbue and reform his own Colossus or stone army. Note the armor of the powerful Tricos and the armored knights and their similarities to the Colossi. If this is all an attempt for Dorman to actually seal himself, perhaps he hopes to better keep himself apart by imbuing a great many life forms with his spirit as, although the 16 Colossi were powerful or otherwise imposing, smaller soldiers and beings could be far more easily concealed and forgotten. Or is this all an attempt for Dorman to live on eternally, small vestiges of his essence within his minions? And that concludes part 2 of the Shadow of the Colossus Iceberg. As always, I hope you found something to enjoy and learned something new. If I missed anything or you have something to add or critique, share it down below. I'll see you next time. Thanks.